The spring air inside First Light Baptist Church carried the scent of lilies and old hymnals, mixed with something Odessa Monroe couldn't quite name. Maybe hope, maybe history. She sat in the third pew, her navy dress pressed sharp as a crease in prayer, hands folded over a worn leather purse that held more than necessities. Tucked inside, behind her wallet and reading glasses, was a photograph of her husband, Robert. Broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, wearing that lopsided smile that had caught her attention 43 years ago at a church barbecue. Robert had been gone 5 years. Stroke, quick and supposedly merciful, the way he'd always said he wanted. Don't let me linger, Dessa. But mercy was a word for those left behind to wrestle with. To Odessa, it had felt like theft. Preston James Monroe. The name rang across the sanctuary, and Odessa's breath caught somewhere between her lungs and throat. Her son, their son, walked across the stage in cap and gown, diploma in hand, shoulders straight in that way Robert used to stand when he was proud of something. The congregation erupted. Someone behind her shouted, "That's right, baby. You did it." Gloria Jean Williams. Odessa recognized the voice without turning. Her best friend of 40 years, the only person who knew what this moment cost, what it meant, what it hid. Preston accepted the diploma with a firm handshake, his dark eyes scanning the crowd until they found hers. He nodded once. She nodded back, throat too tight to smile the way a mother should. Electrical engineering. GPA, 3.8, 3 job offers. Odessa opened her purse, thumb brushing over Robert's photograph. He made it, she thought. Our boy made it. But even as the thought formed, another one slithered beneath it, uninvited. Eleanor would have been here. Eleanor, Robert's mother, dead now 10 years, having passed just 3 years before Robert himself. Odessa had kept Robert away from her those last years, told herself it was necessary, that Eleanor was controlling, that her help always came with strings attached. Now, sitting in this church watching Preston graduate, Odessa wondered if Eleanor had sat somewhere once, watching Robert achieve something, feeling this same complicated pride mixed with fear. Fear that success was built on sand, fear that she'd given too much, fear that love could be mistaken for leverage. The memory came sharp and unwelcome. Eleanor at their kitchen table 20 years ago, checkbook open, offering to help with Robert's business loan. "I just want to see him succeed," Eleanor had said, and Odessa had smiled and said, "We've got it handled," and later told Robert, "Your mother thinks we can't manage on our own." Had Eleanor been helping or controlling? Had Odessa been protecting or isolating? The question felt too heavy for a graduation day. 8 months later, on a gray Friday afternoon in November, Odessa stood at her kitchen sink peeling potatoes when she heard Preston's Honda pull into the driveway. The engine cut. Then silence. 1 minute, 2, 3. She dried her hands and moved to the window. Preston sat gripping the steering wheel, forehead pressed against the rim, shoulders shaking. By the time she reached the front door, he was climbing the porch steps, face carefully blank, messenger bag slung over one shoulder. But Odessa had raised this boy. She knew every micro-expression, every tell. "What happened?" Preston stopped on the threshold. For a moment she thought he might cry. Instead he laughed, short, bitter, wrong. "They let me go. Not a good fit," they said. "After 6 months of me fixing their screw-ups, suddenly I'm not a good fit." Third job in 6 months. Odessa didn't say it. She stepped aside. "What did they say exactly?" Preston dropped his bag on the couch harder than necessary. "Does it matter? They don't respect innovation, Mom. I showed them a better design. Could have cut costs 30%, and they buried it. Told me to stay in my lane. Like I'm a threat because I actually know what I'm doing." His voice rose, hands gesturing sharp. Odessa noticed the tremor in his right hand. She also noticed, as he passed close, the faint smell of beer. At 4:30 on a Friday. "Preston, have you been drinking?" He froze, back to her. "I had 1 beer with Marcus after. That's it. I'm just asking." "Well, don't." He disappeared upstairs. The bedroom door closed with a thud that wasn't quite a slam but held all the same violence. Odessa returned to the kitchen and stared at the half-peeled potatoes. That night, taking out the trash, she found them. 3 empty whiskey bottles tucked behind the garbage bin. Jim Beam. The cheap stuff. She pulled them out one by one, glass cold in her palms. But there was something else. Crumpled beneath the bottles. Lottery scratchers. At least 20 of them. All losers. And a betting slip from the racetrack, dated 2 days ago. 500 on a horse named Lucky Eleanor. Odessa stood in the November dark, holding the evidence of something she didn't want to understand yet. Her son was lying to her. And maybe, just maybe, the lies went deeper than she'd imagined. Preston sat in his car outside the Riverside bar, hands shaking, trying to count the money he had left. Wallet, $43. Bank account. He'd checked on his phone, $127. Credit cards, maxed. The job he'd just lost, his 3rd in 6 months. And this time it was his fault. He'd been late twice, distracted, arguing with supervisors when they questioned his improvements to their systems. The truth he couldn't tell his mother. He owed $8,000 to DraftKings. Another $3,000 to a guy named Vic who ran a poker game out of a warehouse in Hartford. The emergency that got him fired today was actually him leaving work to meet Vic, who'd sent a text that said simply, "Friday, no excuses." He'd paid Vic $2,000, the last of his savings, and now he was here in this parking lot, trying to figure out how to ask his widowed mother for money without telling her why he really needed it. That's when he saw her. Mallory Chen, stepping out of a Tesla, all confidence and tailored suit, laughing into her phone. She'd been in his engineering program, dropped out junior year to pursue marketing, and according to LinkedIn, was now crushing it at some boutique agency in Stamford. Preston didn't plan to go inside, but his feet moved anyway. 3 hours later, he was drunk on top-shelf bourbon he couldn't afford, telling Mallory about his mother, his dead father, his 3 failed jobs, everything except the gambling. And Mallory listened with these intense brown eyes that made him feel like he was interesting instead of falling apart. "You're too talented to be working for people who don't get it," she said, touching his arm. "You should start your own thing. Consulting. With your skills, you'd kill it." "Takes capital to start," Preston said. "So get capital." She shrugged like it was simple. "I borrowed from my parents to start my agency. Best investment they ever made. Family believes in you, right?" That's how it started. Not with Mallory manipulating him, though later he'd tell himself that story, but with Preston already halfway to asking, and Mallory just giving him permission to do what he'd already decided. The next day, hungover and desperate, Preston called his mother. "Mom, I've got an opportunity. A friend from school. She runs a marketing firm. She wants to partner with me on a tech consulting venture. But I need capital for startup costs. $85,000. For equipment, office space, licensing." The lie came easier than he'd expected. "That's a lot of money, baby." "I know, but Mom, this could be it. Be real independence. I'd be my own boss, and I'd pay you back in 2 years with interest." Silence on the line. Then, "Let me think about it." She called back 3 hours later. "I'll help, but Preston, I'm putting my name on the lease, on the equipment, everything. Not because I don't trust you, but because your father taught me to protect investments. You understand?" He understood. She was doing exactly what Eleanor had done to Robert, helping with strings attached. The irony didn't escape him, but he was too desperate to care. The check cleared on a Wednesday. By Friday, he'd used $85,000 as a down payment on a house in Westchester that Mallory insisted they needed for credibility. The consulting business never materialized. By month 2, Mallory had moved in. By month 3, they were engaged. By month 6, she was Mallory Monroe, and Preston owed Vic another $12,000. Over the next 3 years, the pattern established itself with the precision of addiction. Year 1, Preston asked for $35,000 for Mallory's boutique marketing agency. Odessa wired it with a note. "Believe in you both." Preston used $20,000 to pay gambling debts. Mallory used $15,000 for office space that closed within 8 months. Year 2, Preston needed $42,000 for a car. Essential for client meetings, Mallory insisted. Odessa co-signed the loan because Preston's credit had mysteriously deteriorated. The car was a luxury SUV that Mallory drove while Preston took the bus to his 4th job in 18 months. Year 2, November. Unexpected expenses. $28,000. Preston had lost big on Monday Night Football, and Vic's friends didn't accept payment plans. Odessa sent a check the same day with a note. Family helps family. Year 3, March. Medical emergency. $15,000. Mallory needed urgent surgery. The surgery was a tummy tuck and breast augmentation. Preston knew but said nothing because he was too ashamed to admit he'd married someone who lied as easily as he did. Each time Odessa helped. Each time she told herself it was different from Eleanor. She wasn't controlling, she was supporting. She wasn't manipulating, she was mothering. But late at night, alone in the house Robert had built, Odessa would pull out Eleanor's last letter, the one that arrived 2 weeks after Eleanor's funeral, written in those final days. Dearest Odessa, I forgive you for keeping Robert away. I hope someday you'll understand I only wanted to help him. Sometimes the hardest love is knowing when to stop helping. I learned too late. I hope you learned sooner. Eleanor. Odessa kept the letter in her nightstand. She never told Preston about it. She told herself she was nothing like Eleanor, but she was starting to wonder if Eleanor had told herself the same thing. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and clear. Odessa woke at 6, the way she had every Thanksgiving for 40 years, and began preparing Robert's cornbread dressing recipe, the one his grandmother had taught him, the one Eleanor had taught Robert, the one Odessa had insisted she could make better. She'd made it better, technically. Added sage, extra butter, more stock. Robert always said hers was different but good. Now, alone in her kitchen, Odessa wondered if different had been Robert's kind way of saying, not the same. At 2 p.m., the turkey was ready. The table was set for 3. The house smelled like memory and waiting. At 2:15, her phone rang. Preston. Mom, about Thanksgiving. Mallory's parents really want us there this year. They're getting older, and I'm getting older too, baby. I'm 65. I know, Mom, I know. But it's complicated. Mallory's mom is going through some stuff, and I'm going through some stuff too. I'm going through my first Thanksgiving alone since your father died. Silence. Then, we'll make it up to you. Christmas for sure, I promise. Odessa heard Mallory's voice in the background, sharp and insistent, though she couldn't make out words. Okay, Odessa said, because what else could she say? She spent Thanksgiving alone, staring at a turkey meant for 3, and for the first time in 5 years, she let herself cry for Robert. Not the polite tears of grief she'd allowed at the funeral, but the ugly, choking sobs of someone who'd lost their witness, their partner in understanding what it meant to be flawed and forgiven. Gloria came by around 6, took one look at Odessa's face, and pulled her into a hug that smelled like perfume and pumpkin pie. They didn't come, Gloria said. Statement, not question. No. Baby, when are you going to stop making excuses for that boy? He's my son, Gloria. And you were Eleanor's daughter-in-law. Did that stop you from keeping Robert away from her? The words landed like a slap. Odessa pulled back. That was different. Was it? Eleanor helped Robert. You helped Preston. Eleanor felt unappreciated. You feel unappreciated. She got cut out. You're getting cut out. Gloria's voice softened. Dessa, I love you. But sometimes history doesn't repeat. We just choose to live it again. After Gloria left, Odessa sat in Robert's chair and pulled out Eleanor's letter, read it for the 100th time, and for the first time really heard it. Sometimes the hardest love is knowing when to stop helping. December arrived with its usual chaos of lights and carols and collective pretending that everyone was happy. Odessa bought gifts for Preston and Mallory, a leather briefcase for him, a designer scarf for her. She wrapped them carefully, imagining Christmas morning, imagining maybe this year they'd stay through lunch. The text arrived December 10th at 9:47 p.m. Mom, about Christmas. Mallory's parents are staying with us this year. It's going to be their Christmas. Family only. We'll catch up with you in January. Hope you understand. Family only. Odessa read it 3 times. Each time, the words rearranged themselves into something worse. She called immediately. Preston answered on the 5th ring, voice weary. David, I don't understand. Christmas has always been our time. Preston, Mom. My name is Preston. The correction hit her like ice water. She'd called him David, Robert's middle name, the name she'd almost given him, but Eleanor had insisted was too common. I'm sorry. Preston, can we please have Christmas Eve at least? Muffled voices. Mallory, sharp and insistent. Then Preston, voice harder. Mom, you need to accept that things are different. I have a wife. Her family matters too. You're being selfish. Selfish, the word Robert had used once in their worst fight, when Odessa had refused to let Eleanor babysit because she spoils him. Selfish. The word Odessa had spent 40 years proving she wasn't. I've given you everything, she said quietly. That's the problem. You give and then act like we owe you. Mallory says it's manipulative, and honestly, Mom, I'm starting to see it. The line went dead. Odessa stood in her kitchen, phone still pressed to her ear, looking at the Christmas decorations she'd already put up. The ornaments Preston had made in elementary school, the stocking with his name in red thread, the framed photo of the 3 of them, Robert, Preston, Odessa, taken 20 years ago when life still made sense. She nodded to herself in the empty room, a silent acknowledgement. Then she walked upstairs, past Preston's childhood bedroom that she'd kept exactly as he left it, and opened the cedar chest at the foot of her bed. Inside, Eleanor's letter, but also something else. A box of letters from Robert to his mother, letters Odessa had found after he died, letters he'd never sent. She pulled one out at random. Mom, I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. Odessa thinks you're trying to control us with money. I think she's scared of becoming like you. I'm scared of being caught in the middle. I love you both, but I don't know how to love you both at the same time. R. Odessa sat on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by unsent letters and delayed understanding, and finally saw it clearly. She'd become Eleanor. She'd recreated the exact dynamic she'd sworn to avoid. The generous gifts, the helpful loans, the hurt feelings when appreciation felt insufficient, the slow exclusion, the desperate grab for relevance. And Preston, God, Preston. He was Robert, caught between loyalty and self-preservation, choosing self-preservation because it was easier. But there was one difference. Eleanor had died waiting for Robert to see her clearly. Odessa was still alive. She still had a choice. She could keep giving until Preston cut her off completely. Or she could do what Eleanor had begged Robert to let her do in that final letter. Stop helping. Not out of spite, out of love, the hardest love. Odessa pulled out her phone and Googled family law attorneys near me. Found one with good reviews. Marcus Holloway, Esquire. Specializes in family financial disputes. She drafted an email. Mr. Holloway, I need to discuss reclaiming money I've loaned to my son. Not because I want to punish him, but because I want to save him from becoming what I almost became. Someone who mistakes enabling for love. I'm available, Monday. Odessa Monroe. She stared at the draft for 20 minutes. Her finger hovered over delete. Then she thought about Eleanor, dying with unsent wisdom. Thought about Robert, trapped between 2 women who loved him in ways that hurt. Thought about Preston, drowning in debts and lies she couldn't see because she'd been too busy helping to notice he needed saving. She pressed send. Then Odessa Monroe, 65 years old, widow, mother, former enabler, sat in her empty house on a December night and made a promise to the 3 people who'd shaped her life. To Eleanor, I'll do what you couldn't. To Robert, I'll free our son the way you couldn't free yourself. To Preston, I'll love you enough to let you fall. And to herself, the promise that mattered most. I'll become the woman I was before I learned that love required sacrifice. I'll become whole. Outside, the first snow of December began to fall. Inside, Odessa Monroe began the work of breaking a cycle 40 years in the making. Marcus Holloway's office sat on the third floor of a renovated brownstone in downtown Hartford, the kind of place that whispered competence without shouting wealth. Odessa arrived Monday morning at 9 sharp, clutching a folder that had taken her all weekend to assemble. The man who greeted her wasn't what she'd expected. Marcus was 58, black, with silver threading through close-cropped hair, and eyes that had seen enough family warfare to recognize a reluctant soldier when one walked through his door. "Mrs. Monroe," he shook her hand firmly. "Your email was honest. Most people start with 'my ungrateful son' or 'I want to teach them a lesson.' You started with 'I want to save him.' That's different." "Is it?" Odessa settled into the leather chair across from his desk. "Or is that just what I'm telling myself so I can sleep at night?" Marcus smiled, not the professional smile of a man billing $350 an hour, but something real. "In my experience, Mrs. Monroe, the people who question their motives are usually the ones with the right ones." He opened her folder. For 20 minutes he read in silence while Odessa watched Hartford move past the window. People heading to work, living ordinary Monday mornings, not sitting in lawyers' offices deciding whether to sue their own children. Finally, Marcus looked up. "This is substantial. Over $200,000 in 3 years. And you're listed as co-signer on the mortgage, primary on the car loan." He paused. "Mrs. Monroe, did you intentionally structure it this way? Keep your name on everything?" Odessa's throat tightened. "I told myself it was to protect the investment. But honestly, I think some part of me knew that I'd need leverage." "Insurance," Odessa corrected, but they both knew it meant the same thing. Marcus leaned back. "Here's what you need to understand. Legally, you've got a strong case. These co-signatory positions give you rights. And this," he tapped an email printout. "This is Preston writing, 'We'll pay you back ASAP, Mom. Promise.' That transforms at least the house down payment from a gift into a documented loan." "But?" Odessa heard the hesitation. "But this will hurt him, Odessa. May I call you Odessa?" She nodded. "This will hurt him badly. His credit will be destroyed. He'll likely lose the house, the car. If he's employed, we can garnish wages. If he's not..." Marcus paused. "You said you want to save him. I need you to understand. Sometimes salvation looks a lot like destruction." Odessa thought about Eleanor's letter, about Robert's unsent confessions, about Preston sitting in his car, shoulders shaking. "What if it's already destroying him?" she asked quietly. "What if me giving and giving is the destruction, just slower?" Marcus studied her for a long moment. "Then we proceed, but carefully. And I need you to be prepared for what we might find." "What do you mean?" "When you pull the thread on financial chaos, Mrs. Monroe, sometimes the whole sweater unravels. Are you ready to see what's underneath?" The unraveling began with bank records. Marcus's paralegal, a sharp-eyed woman named Keisha Washington, pulled 3 years of Preston's statements using the account access Odessa still had from when she'd helped him set it up. What they found made Odessa's hands go cold. Regular withdrawals at Mohegan Sun Casino, $500, $1,000, sometimes $2,000. ATM withdrawals at Trax, Saratoga, Belmont, Suffolk Downs. Online transfers to DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM. Payments to something called VRE Enterprises that Keisha identified as a front for an underground poker operation. "Jesus," Marcus muttered, spreading the statements across his conference table. "Odessa, your son doesn't have a spending problem. He has a gambling addiction." The words landed like a diagnosis for a disease she'd been treating with Band-Aids. All those job losses. Had they been firings, or had Preston been stealing time, stealing money, chasing losses? All those unexpected expenses. Had any been real? "How much?" Odessa's voice came out hollow. Keisha calculated on her laptop. Based on what we can see, conservatively, he's lost $60,000 to $70,000 in the last 18 months alone. Could be more if he's using cash. Odessa sat down hard. $60,000, on top of the $200,000 she'd given. That meant, he owes more than what I gave him, she said. The money I sent didn't help. It just fed the addiction, Marcus finished gently. Odessa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Knowing this, knowing Preston is sick, not just irresponsible, do you still want to proceed? Odessa closed her eyes, saw Preston at 10, learning to ride a bike, refusing her help until he'd bloodied both knees. Saw Preston at 16, lying about where he'd been, that same stubborn jaw. Saw Preston at 35, shoulders shaking in a car, lying about beer, lying about everything. What happens if I don't proceed? She asked. You keep giving. He keeps losing. Eventually, he owes the wrong people, and... Marcus didn't finish. And if I do proceed? He hits bottom, hard, but maybe, it saves his life. Odessa thought about Eleanor, enabling Robert until the day she died. Thought about Robert, never quite solvent, never quite stable, always one bad month from disaster until his heart gave out at 67. We proceed, she said. But Marcus, is there a way to make treatment part of the settlement? Rehab instead of just repayment? Marcus smiled. Now you're thinking like someone who wants to save him, not punish him. But first, they needed more evidence. And that evidence walked through Odessa's front door 3 days later wearing Louboutins and lies. Mallory arrived on a Saturday morning, unannounced, carrying a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a designer handbag Odessa recognized from Preston's emergency medical withdrawal 6 months ago. Odessa, I hope I'm not interrupting. Mallory had never called her mom, never even tried. I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. We haven't had a chance to really connect, just us girls. In 4 years of marriage, Mallory had never initiated a just us girls moment. Odessa's internal alarm screamed, but she smiled and stepped aside. Come in, I'll make coffee. What Mallory didn't know, Odessa had started recording all interactions with Preston and Mallory after her meeting with Marcus. Her phone, face up on the coffee table as always, was already recording when they sat down. They made small talk. Weather, Christmas shopping, how busy everyone was, and Odessa watched Mallory perform graciousness like a rehearsed monologue. Then, 20 minutes in, the performance shifted. Odessa, I wanted to apologize. Mallory leaned forward, earnest and practiced, for how things have been. I know Preston was harsh on the phone about Christmas. He's under so much pressure at work. Partner track at his firm is cutthroat, and I think he took it out on you. Preston had been unemployed for 6 weeks. Odessa knew because his unemployment claims came to the house. He'd never changed his address from hers. I understand pressure, Odessa said carefully. The thing is, Mallory's voice dropped, confidential. We're going through a really difficult time financially. Preston didn't want to worry you, but his firm is doing layoffs, and we're stretched so thin. The mortgage, the car payment, my business overhead. Here it comes, Odessa thought. So I was hoping. Mallory's hand touched Odessa's arm, a gesture of intimacy they'd never shared. That maybe you could help us one more time, just $30,000 to get us through the next few months. I know you've been so generous, and we really do appreciate it, even if we don't say it enough. Her smile widened. And of course, after Christmas, we'll make more effort to include you. Maybe a nice dinner in January. Financial manipulation, emotional blackmail, and a promise purchased with money that would never be repaid. All recorded. But Odessa noticed something else. As Mallory talked, her phone buzzed on the table beside her purse. The screen lit up. Brian, can't wait to see you tonight. Mallory glanced down, smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one, and silenced it quickly. But not before Odessa saw the message preview. Bring that red thing I like. Your business partner? Odessa asked innocently, nodding at the phone. Mallory's face flickered, just for a second, with something like panic. "Oh, yes. Brian. He runs the gym where I do marketing consulting. Very demanding client." The lie was smooth, but Odessa had spent 35 years as a school principal. She knew when someone was lying about their whereabouts. "That's nice," Odessa said, "that you can mix fitness and business." They talked for another 10 minutes. Odessa watched Mallory's tells, the way her eyes went to her phone, the way she checked her manicure, fresh, expensive, the way she mentioned Preston doesn't need to know about everything when discussing business expenses. After Mallory left, Odessa sat alone in her living room, phone still recording, and felt something unexpected. Pity. Mallory wasn't happy. The affair, the manipulation, the constant performance. These were symptoms of someone trapped in their own lies, drowning in their own construction. Preston wasn't the only sick one. They were both sick, making each other sicker. She sent the recording to Marcus with a note. "Evidence of manipulation. Also, I think she's having an affair. Does that matter legally?" Marcus's response came an hour later. "For the money? No. For showing a pattern of deception? Yes. For understanding what we're really dealing with? Absolutely. These aren't bad people, Odessa. They're drowning people pulling each other under." T. Monday morning, December 13th, Marcus's office sent 3 demand letters via certified mail and email. Letter 1, to Preston and Mallory Monroe, regarding immediate removal of Odessa Monroe from mortgage co-signature or full repayment of $85,000 down payment, classified as loan per written promise of repayment. Letter 2, to Preston Monroe regarding car loan in Odessa Monroe's name, demanding surrender of vehicle or immediate payment in full of $42,000. Letter 3, to Preston and Mallory Monroe regarding all financial transfers over 3 years, totaling $205,000, now formally classified as loans requiring repayment plan within 30 days. Additionally, Marcus initiated a freeze on the joint account that still held Odessa's name, an account containing $12,000 Preston had deposited from his last unemployment check. Odessa was in her kitchen, making herself lunch she wouldn't eat, when her phone exploded. Preston 6 missed calls. Mallory 4 missed calls. Preston, text message in all caps. "What the hell did you do? Call me now." Odessa stared at her phone, heart hammering, hands shaking. This was it, the point of no return. She could call Marcus right now, stop everything, wire Preston the $30,000 Mallory had asked for, go back to enabling, go back to slow destruction, or she could do the hardest thing she'd ever done. She didn't call back. At 4 p.m., Preston's call came through again. This time, Odessa answered. "Mom?" His voice cracked on the word. Not angry, destroyed. "Mom, please, what is this? I can't. Preston, they froze our account. $12,000, Mom. That's rent, groceries, utilities. Mallory is..." She's hysterical. "And these letters, they're saying you're calling in everything. The house, the car. He was crying now, ugly, choking sobs. "Mom, I need help. Please, I'm begging you." Odessa closed her eyes. Every maternal instinct screamed to fix it, to wire money, to make the crying stop. "What kind of help, Preston?" "Just stop this. Call off your lawyer. We'll work something out, I promise. We'll pay you back. Just please don't do this." "Preston, are you gambling?" Silence, the kind of silence that admitted everything. "Preston, I found the betting slips, the casino withdrawals. Baby, I know." I don't have a problem. I just had some bad luck, but I can..." "How much do you owe?" "Mom, how much?" More silence. Then so quiet she almost missed it. $67,000. To people who aren't banks. Odessa's knees went weak. She sat down hard at the kitchen table. "Jesus, Preston. I can fix it. I just need time and money. Mom, please, if you could just..." "No!" "What?" "No more money, Preston. Not until you get help. Real help." "I don't need help." I need my mother to not destroy my life. I'm not destroying it, baby. You already did that. I'm just refusing to keep paying for the destruction. Preston's voice turned sharp, desperate. You know what? This is exactly what Mallory said, that you use money to control me, that you can't handle that I'm an adult with my own life, and she's right. You're just like Eleanor, Odessa finished. Like your grandmother who tried to help your father and I cut her out for it? Yes, Preston, I'm exactly like her. And do you know what I learned too late? She wasn't trying to control Robert. She was trying to save him, just like I'm trying to save you. By taking our house, our car, by ruining us, by letting you finally face consequences. Preston's breathing was ragged on the line. I'll never forgive you for this. I know, Odessa said and hung up. She sat at her kitchen table and wept, not for the relationship she was losing, but for the son she'd already lost to addiction, to lies, to the slow drowning she'd been funding for 3 years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Preston. Fine. You want to play hardball? We'll see you in court. Mallory's already calling her lawyer. But 20 minutes later, another text. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I'm just scared. I don't know what to do. And then, there are these guys, the ones I owe. They're not patient. If I can't pay, Mom, I'm scared. Odessa's hands shook as she typed. Then let me help you the right way. Get into treatment. I'll work with you on the money, but no more enabling, no more Band-Aids on bullet wounds. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I don't know if I can. Then I'll wait until you're ready. But Preston, the legal action stands. I love you too much to keep drowning with you. No response. That night, Odessa couldn't sleep. She kept checking her phone, terrified of a call from a hospital, from police, from whoever Preston owed $67,000 to. At 2 a.m., she called Gloria. He's an addict, Odessa said without preamble. Gambling. $67,000 to loan sharks. Gloria was silent for a moment. And you're still going through with the lawsuit? I have to, don't I? Baby, I can't answer that. But I'll tell you what I told my daughter when she was using. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let them hit bottom, even when the sound of the impact breaks your heart. What if bottom is? What if he doesn't survive bottom? Then he wasn't going to survive the slow fall either. At least this way, he's got a chance. The letter arrived Wednesday, slipped under Odessa's door at dawn. Hand-delivered, no stamp. Mom, I'm writing this because my therapist, yes, I found a therapist, Mallory doesn't know, said I need to be honest with at least one person, and you're the only one who already knows how bad it is. I started gambling in college. Small stuff. March Madness brackets, poker with friends. After Dad died, it got worse. After I lost the first job, it got worse. After I married Mallory, it got worse because I was lying to her too, and the lying made me need the rush more. The $67,000 isn't all gambling. $20,000 is gambling. The rest is, I've been borrowing from Vic, the loan shark, to pay off earlier gambling debts and to hide money from Mallory that I'm using for gambling. It's a circle. I can't get out. Here's the truth. Mallory is cheating on me, has been for 6 months, maybe longer, with her business partner, Brian. I know because I saw texts, saw receipts for hotels. I said nothing because I'm also a liar, also using her, also using you, using everyone. We're both drowning, Mom. And every time you threw us a rope, money, we just used it to tie ourselves to anchors. I don't expect you to forgive the debt. I don't expect you to stop the lawsuit. I'm writing because I need you to know you were right about everything. And I'm sorry for all of it. For becoming someone Dad would be ashamed of. For becoming someone I'm ashamed of. My therapist says I need inpatient treatment. 30 days minimum. There's a place in Rhode Island. I can't afford it. And I know I have no right to ask. But if there's any way, not as a loan, but as a gift with conditions. Treatment first, then we deal with the money stuff. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to give me a chance to save myself. I'm sorry. I love you. I understand if you can't. Preston Odessa read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she picked up the phone and called Marcus. He's ready, she said. We need to revise our terms. To what? Mercy with accountability, help with consequences, love that doesn't enable. Marcus was quiet for a moment. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years. That might be the first time I've heard a client say exactly the right thing. They spent an hour drafting new terms. Preston enters 30-day inpatient treatment immediately. Upon completion, house is refinanced to remove Odessa's name, car surrendered, but remaining debt is restructured with a clause. Complete 90-day outpatient treatment and 1 year of verifiable sobriety, and Odessa forgives $100,000 of the debt. Fail treatment, relapse, or miss payments on the remaining $105,000, and the full legal weight of collection proceeds. This is risky, Marcus warned. If he relapses, you're back to square one. He's my son, Odessa said. This is the risk I should have taken 3 years ago. Not giving him money, giving him ultimatums. She wrote back to Preston. Friday, 9 a.m., Marcus Holloway's office. You, me, Mallory, lawyers. We talk terms. But Preston, you walk in sober, or you walk in ready to be, or you don't walk in at all. The response came immediately. I'll be there. Thank you, Mom. I'm sorry it took this. Odessa folded his letter and put it in the drawer with Eleanor's. 2 generations. 2 mothers. 2 sons. One lesson finally learned. Love doesn't mean protecting people from consequences. Love means ensuring consequences come with a path back home. Friday morning, Odessa woke at dawn, put on her navy dress, the same one from Preston's graduation, and drove to Hartford. The reckoning was about to begin, but for the first time in 3 years, it felt like it might end in redemption. Marcus Holloway's conference room felt too small for the weight of everything it held. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Hartford, indifferent December light spilling across the polished table where 5 people sat with the accumulated wreckage of 3 years between them. Preston arrived first, 10 minutes early, looking like he'd aged a decade in a week. His suit hung loose. He'd lost weight. His eyes were clear but haunted, the eyes of someone newly sober and terrified of what sobriety revealed. He didn't look at Odessa when he entered, just nodded once and took a seat. Mallory arrived exactly on time, flanked by a young attorney named Bradley Stevens, who looked fresh out of law school and already in over his head. She wore armor, tailored black suit, hair pulled back severe, makeup perfect. But Odessa noticed the crack in the facade. Mallory's hand shook as she set down her purse, and she kept glancing at Preston like she was calculating escape routes. The mediator was Judge Rita Thornton, retired, a black woman in her 70s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had presided over enough family destruction to recognize a salvageable situation when she saw one. Before we begin, Judge Thornton said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to raise it, I want to establish ground rules. This is mediation, not litigation. We're here to find a path forward, not assign blame. Though, she glanced at the files before her, I suspect there's plenty to go around. Bradley Stevens cleared his throat. Your Honor, my clients are prepared to negotiate in good faith. However, we believe Mrs. Monroe's actions constitute financial abuse and... Mr. Stevens. Judge Thornton's interruption was surgical. I've reviewed the documentation. Mrs. Monroe loaned, co-signed, and gifted over $200,000 to your clients over 3 years. At what point does generosity become abuse? When it's used as control, let's hear from the parties themselves, Judge Thornton said. Preston Monroe, you requested this meeting. Why don't you start? Preston looked up, and Odessa saw tears already forming. I'm an addict, he said, voice rough. Gambling. Started in college, got worse after my father died, spiraled completely after I got married. I've lost, his voice cracked. I've lost approximately $90,000 gambling in the last 3 years, on top of the $200,000 my mother gave us. Mallory's head whipped toward him. 90,000? You said it was 20. I lied. Preston turned to face his wife for the first time. I've been lying about everything. The job losses weren't bad luck or office politics. I was stealing time, stealing money in one case, too distracted by debts to perform. I've been borrowing from loan sharks to cover gambling debts, using mom's money to pay loan sharks, then gambling more trying to win it back. It's a cycle I couldn't stop. Jesus Christ, Preston. Mallory's composure cracked. 90,000? And I know about Brian, Preston continued, his voice steadier now, like confession was its own kind of relief. I've known for 6 months. I said nothing because I was lying too. We've been lying to each other, using each other, drowning each other. The room went silent. Bradley Stevens looked like he wanted to disappear. Marcus Holloway watched with the careful attention of someone witnessing a controlled demolition. Judge Thornton turned to Mallory. Mrs. Monroe, do you have anything you'd like to say? Mallory's face cycled through emotions. Shock, anger, calculation. Then something unexpected. She laughed. Not hysterical, just bitter and tired. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I'm having an affair. Have been since March. With Brian, my business partner. And you know what the really sick part is? I started it because I was lonely. Because Preston was never present, always stressed, always checking his phone for God knows what. Now I know, sports scores and bets. She turned to Odessa, and her voice went sharp. But you know what, Odessa? You're not innocent here either. You want to act like the victim, like the generous mother who just wanted to help. But you enabled him. Every time Preston failed, you caught him. Every time he needed money, you provided it. You never let him face consequences. You never asked hard questions. You just threw money at problems and called it love. Climax to 1, the truth session. The words hit Odessa like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were partially true. She opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Thornton raised a hand. Mrs. Monroe, Mallory, you're right. Odessa, do you want to respond? Odessa took a breath, feeling the weight of Eleanor's letter in her purse, the weight of Robert's unsent confessions, the weight of 3 years of mistakes. You're right, Odessa said quietly. I did enable him, just like his grandmother enabled his father, and I hated her for it. I swore I'd never be like Eleanor, and then I became exactly like her, giving money instead of boundaries, helping instead of requiring accountability. She looked at Preston. Baby, I'm sorry. I thought I was being supportive, but I was just too scared to watch you fail. Too scared you'd end up like your father, always struggling, always stressed. So I smoothed every road, and in doing that, I never let you learn to walk on rough ground. Preston was crying openly now. Mom, but, Odessa continued, her voice firmer. I stopped. That's the difference between me and Eleanor. She never stopped until she died, and it killed her relationship with your father. I stopped, not to punish you, to save you, because I finally understood what Eleanor tried to tell me before she died. Sometimes the hardest love is knowing when to stop helping. Judge Thornton let the silence sit for a moment. Then, Mallory, Preston, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need honesty. Do you want to save this marriage? Preston and Mallory looked at each other. Really looked, maybe for the first time in months. No, they said simultaneously. Good, Judge Thornton said, because this marriage is built on lies and mutual destruction. What you both need is to save yourselves. Preston, you need treatment. Mallory, you need to figure out who you are when you're not performing for someone. And Odessa, she turned to her. You need to forgive yourself for being human. Marcus cleared his throat. Your Honor, we've prepared revised settlement terms. With your permission? For the next hour, they hammered out details. Preston would enter 30-day inpatient gambling treatment at Cornerstone Recovery in Rhode Island, starting Monday. Upon completion, he'd transition to 90-day outpatient treatment and mandatory Gamblers Anonymous attendance. The Westchester house would be sold. Market was good. They'd likely break even after paying off the mortgage. The car would be surrendered immediately to Odessa, who would sell it and apply proceeds to the debt. Preston and Mallory would file for divorce, splitting remaining debts equally. The critical clause. If Preston completed treatment and maintained 1 year of verifiable sobriety, verified through GA sponsor and random drug gambling testing, Odessa would forgive $100,000 of the debt. The remaining $105,000 would be structured as a formal loan at 3% interest, payable over 4 years at $20,500 a month. Mistreatment, relapse, or miss 2 consecutive payments, and the full amount became due immediately with legal collection proceedings. "This is incredibly generous," Bradley Stevens said, clearly relieved his clients weren't being destroyed. "It's conditional mercy," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference." Preston signed with shaking hands. "Thank you, Mom. I don't deserve this." "No," Odessa agreed. "You don't? That's what makes it grace." Preston stood in the common room of his sober living house in Providence, phone in hand, composing his weekly email to Odessa. She hadn't responded to any of them, 18 emails over 6 months, but he kept writing anyway. His sponsor, Carlos, said it was about the discipline, not the response. "Mom, week 26, sober. Feels like forever and like yesterday. Treatment was hell. Withdrawals weren't physical like drugs, but psychological. Felt like my brain was screaming for the rush, the risk, the possibility. Learned I wasn't gambling for money. Was gambling to feel something other than inadequate. Working at Habitat for Humanity now. Construction. Using my hands like Dad used to. Makes me feel close to him, even though I know he'd be ashamed of what I became. Trying to become someone who'd make him proud. Paid this month's $2,500. On time. From money I actually earned. Feels different than it used to. I don't expect you to write back. Just wanted you to know I'm still trying. Love, Preston." He hit send and pocketed his phone. Outside, his roommate Jake was waiting to drive them to the evening GA meeting. Preston grabbed his jacket, the same one he'd worn to his father's funeral, now worn thin at the elbows. "You ever hear back from your mom?" Jake asked as they drove. "No, but I keep writing." "Why?" Preston thought about it. "Because whether or not she forgives me, I need to prove to myself I can show up, every week, even when there's no reward." At the meeting, Preston shared for the first time in 6 weeks. "I'm Preston, and I'm a compulsive gambler. 26 weeks sober. I destroyed my marriage, my career, and my relationship with my mother. I owe $200,000 I'll spend the next 4 years repaying. And some days I still want to bet on tomorrow's baseball games more than I want my next breath." The room murmured recognition. Carlos, his sponsor, nodded approval. "But I don't," Preston continued, "because I finally understand. Gambling wasn't about winning. It was about delaying the moment when I'd have to face who I really was. And who I really was someone who needed help, someone who couldn't do it alone, someone whose mother loved him enough to let him fall." Odessa, the same 6 months. Odessa's transformation was quieter but no less profound. She joined a support group for families of addicts, Al-Anon and Gam-Anon both. Listened to other parents, spouses, children describe their own enabling, their own tough love, their own grief for relationships lost to addiction. "I read every email he sends," Odessa told the group one evening. "I just can't respond yet. Is that cruel?" A woman named Patricia, whose daughter was a recovering alcoholic, shook her head. "It's self-protection. You're allowed to heal on your timeline, not his." But the emails were working. Each one showed growth. Not dramatic, but real. Preston talking about therapy insights. Preston describing his work building houses for low-income families. Preston naming his triggers and his tools. Most importantly, Preston never asking for money. Never asking for anything except to be heard. In March, Odessa planted a garden, something she'd never done. Robert had been the gardener. She'd just enjoyed the results. Now, hands in soil, she found herself crying for the first time since the mediation. Not sad tears. Release tears. Gloria found her there, dirt under her fingernails, face wet. "You okay, baby?" "I'm grieving, Eleanor." Odessa said, really grieving, for the first time, for what she lost with Robert, for what she tried to give us and we couldn't receive, for the fact that she died thinking she'd failed. You think you failed, Preston? No. Odessa planted a tomato seedling with careful hands. I think I finally succeeded, but it took becoming Eleanor to understand what she was trying to do. In May, Odessa started volunteering at a youth center, mentoring teenage girls. When one of them asked why she was qualified, Odessa said, "Because I've made every mistake a mother can make, and I'm still learning from them." The girl had laughed. That's the most honest thing an adult's ever said to me. 1 year later, December, the coffee shop was neutral ground. Not Odessa's territory, not Preston's, just a Starbucks halfway between Providence and Hartford. They'd agreed to meet at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. No lawyers, no mediators, just a mother and son who hadn't spoken in 12 months. Preston arrived first, 15 minutes early, ordered black coffee he didn't drink, and waited. Odessa arrived exactly on time, looking different. Her hair was natural now, silver threading through black, no more dye. She wore jeans and a sweater, not the careful dresses she used to armor herself in. She looked lighter, freer. They sat across from each other, and for a long moment neither spoke. "You look good, Mom," Preston said finally. "So do you, baby." He did. 30 pounds heavier, muscle from construction work, clear eyes, steady hands. The haunted look was gone, replaced with something harder but healthier. Accountability. "I got your emails," Odessa said, "all 52 of them." Preston's eyes widened. You read them?" "Everyone. The night they came in. I just couldn't. I needed time. I understand." Silence again. Then Odessa reached into her purse and pulled out 2 letters. One was Eleanor's, yellowed and creased from reading. The other was new, in Odessa's handwriting. "I want to read you something," she said. "Your grandmother Eleanor wrote this before she died. I've carried it for 10 years, but I only really understood it this year." She read Eleanor's letter aloud, about forgiveness, about enabling, about the hardest love being knowing when to stop helping. Preston was crying before she finished. "She knew, Grandma Eleanor knew what I'd become before I became it." "She knew what the cycle looked like," Odessa corrected gently, "because she lived it with your father, and I perpetuated it with you. But Preston, we broke it. Together. Painfully, but we broke it." She handed him the second letter. "This is for you. I wrote it last week." Preston unfolded it with shaking hands. "Dear Preston, I forgive you. Not because you've earned it, though you have. Not because you've paid enough, though you're paying. I forgive you because I need to forgive myself. I forgive myself for enabling you instead of empowering you, for smoothing roads instead of teaching you to walk on rough ground, for being so afraid of you becoming like your father that I never let you become yourself. You asked me once, years ago when you were small, why I didn't like Grandma Eleanor. I said it was complicated. The truth is, I was terrified of becoming her. And in trying not to become her, I became exactly her. But I also became something she never got the chance to be. I became someone who stopped in time. Your 1 year of sobriety isn't just your victory, baby. It's ours. Mine, yours, Eleanor's, your father's. It's 4 generations of Monroe men and the women who loved them finally breaking the cycle of enabling disguised as love. I'm proud of you. Not for being perfect. For being present. For showing up to your life even when it's hard. For becoming a man your father would recognize. Flawed, struggling, but trying. I love you. I always have. But now I love you with boundaries, with conditions, with the clear eyes of someone who finally understands. Love doesn't mean protecting you from consequences. Love means ensuring consequences come with a path back home. The door is open. It's always been open. I was just waiting for you to be ready to walk through it sober. Mom, Preston read it twice, tears streaming down his face. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep showing up. to your life, to your recovery, to yourself. I will. I promise. Don't promise me, baby. Promise yourself. They talked for 3 hours about his work at Habitat for Humanity, about her garden and her volunteer work, about the divorce. Mallory was in therapy, too, dating someone honestly for the first time in years. About the house sale, which had finally closed, giving Preston enough to pay Odessa $40,000 in a lump sum. You didn't have to do that, Odessa said. The payment plan, I wanted to, because it wasn't a payment. It was an apology. As they stood to leave, Preston asked, "Can we do this again? Maybe once a month?" "I'd like that." They hugged, brief, careful, but real. The hug of two people rebuilding trust, brick by brick. Walking to her car, Odessa felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone wishing things would magically improve, but the steady hope of someone who'd done the hard work and could see the foundation taking hold. Preston was going to be okay. Not perfect, not cured, but okay, and so was she. Thanksgiving, 2 years after the mediation, Odessa's dining room table hadn't seen this many people in a decade. Gloria and her daughter Tamara sat on one side, Marcus Holloway and his partner David on the other. Preston and his girlfriend Rebecca, a counselor he'd met at an Al-Anon family event, sat at the far end. And at the head of the table, in the place Robert used to occupy, sat an empty chair with a small framed photograph. Eleanor Monroe, smiling in a picture from 30 years ago. "I want to say something before we eat," Odessa said, standing. 2 years ago, I almost lost my son. Not to death, but to something worse. To a slow drowning we were both pretending wasn't happening. I thought I was helping him. I was actually killing him with kindness. She looked at Preston. You did the hardest thing anyone can do. You looked at yourself honestly and decided to change. 2 years, 3 months sober, 96 weekly GA meetings, $68,000 paid back of your debt. $72,000 after next week's check clears, Preston corrected with a small smile. 72,000, Odessa amended. But more importantly, you've become someone who helps others. You sponsor 3 people in GA now. You're assistant manager at Habitat. You're building a life on something other than lies. She raised her glass. But I also want to acknowledge someone who's not here. Eleanor Monroe, my mother-in-law, who I cut out of our lives because I was too proud to see she was trying to help. Eleanor, I'm sorry. I finally understand. And I hope wherever you are, you know. We broke the cycle. Took us 2 generations, but we did it. Preston stood, raising his own glass. To Grandma Eleanor, and to Mom, who loved me enough to let me fall. And to everyone here who proved that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. They drank. Then Rebecca, quiet until now, spoke. Can I share something? Preston told me about your letter, Odessa. The one about love with boundaries. I work with families in crisis, and I've never heard it said better. Love doesn't mean protecting people from consequences. Love means ensuring consequences come with a path back home. I can't take credit, Odessa said. Eleanor taught me that. I was just too stubborn to learn it while she was alive. After dinner, while others lingered over pie and coffee, Preston found Odessa in the kitchen washing dishes. Can I help? You can dry. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Preston said, I've been thinking about something. My payments. I've got about $33,000 left to pay you. At my current pace, I'll be done in 14 months. You don't have to rush. Let me finish. He dried a plate carefully. What if instead of the last $33,000 I paid it forward? There's a kid I sponsor, Marcus. Different Marcus. He's 19, destroyed his college fund gambling, can't afford treatment. What if I took what I owe you and paid for his treatment instead? You forgave $100,000 when I hit 1 year sober. This would be me forgiving $33,000 for someone else. Odessa stopped washing, hands still in soapy water. That's a lot of money, Preston. I know, but isn't that what you did? You forgave my debt not because I earned it, but because I needed the grace to keep going. Maybe that's how grace works. It's meant to be passed on. Odessa looked at her son, really looked at him, saw not the boy she'd raised or the addict she'd enabled, but a man who'd walked through fire and come out with wisdom. "Yes," she said, "let's do that, but on one condition." "What's that?" "You tell young Marcus that it's not from you. Tell him it's from his grandmother Eleanor, 2 generations removed, who learned too late but still wanted to teach the lesson." Preston hugged her tight. Deal. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Odessa sat at her desk and pulled out her journal. She'd started keeping one in therapy, writing to process, to remember, to witness her own growth. November 24th, 2 years after the mediation. Dear Eleanor, I'm writing to you not because I believe in ghosts, but because I believe in healing. For 40 years I held on to resentment against you, told myself you were controlling, manipulative, trying to buy Robert's love. And maybe you were all those things, but so was I. The difference is, you died before you could break the cycle. I got a second chance. Preston is 2 years sober. He's whole in ways Robert never got to be, and I'm whole in ways I never was while you were alive. We're both learning what you tried to teach us, that the hardest love is knowing when to stop helping. I forgive you for everything I thought you did wrong, and I hope, wherever you are, you forgive me too. Your daughter, in law, in life, in learning, Odessa. She folded the letter and placed it in the box with all of Eleanor's letters, with Preston's 52 emails, with the settlement documents that had saved them all. Then Odessa Monroe, 67 years old, widow, mother, survivor, walked out to her garden in the November night and stood among the winter remnants of what she'd planted. Some things had died back. Some would return in spring. Some needed to be pulled up and replanted. Just like family. Just like love. Just like the long, hard work of becoming whole. Inside, her phone buzzed. A text from Preston. "Thank you for today. Thank you for everything. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fall. I love you, Mom." Odessa typed back. "I love you too, baby. And I'm proud of us. Both of us." Then she added, "Your grandmother would be proud too." The stars above Hartford were bright and cold and indifferent to human struggle. But Odessa looked up at them anyway and thought, "Eleanor, we did it. We finally did it." And in the silence of the November night, she could almost hear Robert's voice, and behind it Eleanor's, and behind that her own mother's, and all the mothers and sons who'd ever struggled to love each other without destroying each other in the process. The cycle was broken. The door was open. And love, real love, tough love, love with boundaries and grace, had finally come home.